Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Top 5 Best and Worst Minor Aliens of Star Trek The Next Generation. This is a patron requested video requested by patron Norman Buchwald. So, a while back I was looking for a DS9 episode to do, or video to do. I was doing something different for each Star Trek show to wrap up my season by reviews, and for DS9 I was like, oh, let's do the best and worst minor aliens. Well, Patreon supporters seem to have liked it because they want me to do it for every Star Trek show. So I've done it for original series, and now that I finished covering Next Generation, I'll do it for Next Generation. So I'll list off 5 aliens, and I call them minor aliens. They're not necessarily one-offs because some of these have appeared again or multiple times, but they're not like a major thing. They're not like the Romulans or the Klingons or the Gorn or the Cardassians, the Bajorans, something like that. It's something minor that doesn't really come up much in Star Trek. So 5 worst, 5 best. Let's get into it. So start with my top 5 worst minor aliens of Star Trek Next Generation. So we'll start with my number 5, which is the Tallarians from Suddenly Human. Yeah, nobody gives a shit about that. It's funny because I talked about this before. At the time I was reading a lot of articles about season 4 of TNG, and like, oh, they introduced 2 major alien species this season. We get the Tallarians and the Cardassians. But the Cardassians are the only one that's stuck. Like, they were like, I thought they were interesting, great alien enemies to have like immediately as soon as I saw the Wounded. I'm like, I want to see these guys again. And everyone else must have thought that way because we did in fact see those guys again multiple times. But the Tallarians, like, who gives a shit? Like, when I saw them, I'm like, and plus, to mention the fact, there's like 5 or 6 different aliens that all sound similar. There's like Tallarians, Tallarians. Like, I can't keep track. And I'm like, and so I hate all of them because their names all sound too fucking similar. Tellarites. Like, just stick with one. Don't have a bunch of. Anyway, these guys are like, supposed to be big enemies of the Federation at war, yet their weapons suck and they're like little flies in the Enterprise. Granted, Cardassians were like that too, but then they retconned them to make them more important. So if they really liked these guys, they could have retconned it too. But still, and then if they encounter like children in a world that they destroyed and they kill everyone, then they raise the children as their own, I guess. And then they're supposed to be, it's just another warlike. There's so many warlike aliens. Boring. Anyway, next, we'll get into my number 4, which is the Eido. Now, at first I wasn't thinking I'd put the Eido on. This is from the episode Justice, which I like that episode better than most people. Most people think that the episode's shit. I actually like the way they handle the Prime Directive. And a lot of people like to make fun of how cheesy they look with their scantily clad clothing and how they have sex at the drop of the hat and stuff like that. And that's like Roddenberry's horniness, like really showing. That aspect doesn't really bother me. So when I first thought of them, I was like, no, they're not that bad. I'm not going to put them on here. But what made me change my mind is thinking about their stupid ass laws, which... Again, I always have to throw shade at Tasha Yar. Do your fucking job. Like at the start of the episode, she's like, oh, I reviewed their laws. And then later there's like the main law that like covers everything, and she had no idea about it. And I was like, you had one job, Tasha, one job. But anyway, their laws are stupid. Like, oh, well, every single rule, including keep out at the grass, is like terminal in a certain place, so that makes it, so that no one will break any rules whatsoever. First of all, that's like a bit of a tyrannical state, totalitarian. Like, they're shown as like being this peaceful, like, sexy, erotic race that all they care about is sex, yet they have these laws that everyone would be terrified to even break the tiniest rule. over fear of fucking death. And also, like, what happens when someone breaks a rule that's not in the punishment zone? They're like, oh, well, there's no enforcers, so I guess we can do whatever the fuck we want in this zone for a little bit until they switch it up. Like, the law is so nonsensical, and plus they were so, like, rigid with it. They weren't able to make an exception for an alien visitor who knew nothing about their laws, who didn't mean any harm, that just smashed in the plants and said, oh, you'll destroy our society if you let him live. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Fuck these people. Anyway, next, we'll get to number 3, which is the Kalons, I think they're called, from the episode Half a Life. Yeah, this is another group of people. I'm like, fuck them. So this is when this guy Timothy comes on board. He's a scientist, and he's trying to like save their son that's about to like blow up in their face and destroy their entire planet and race, and they're all gonna die. And so they try with Picard to fix it, but it don't quite get there. It doesn't quite work. But too bad, Timothy, because you're about to turn 60. It's our rules and our rituals say, fuck you, you gotta go kill yourself. And when Timothy's like, well, you know, I do respect my laws and rituals, but I think perhaps saving the entire fucking planet from disasters may be a little bit more important than your dumbass rituals. And they're like, nah, fuck you. And they like cut off all communication. They won't even let him save the planet, even if he wanted to. And they keep saying, don't worry about your work. It's done. Others will finish it. When he makes it very clear that it's going to take a younger scientist years to catch up to where he's at. So he's the best chance of saving their entire planet, and they do not give a shit. In fact, his own daughter comes on board and shames him and guilt trips him into fucking doing it. And our rituals are so important. Your whole world is at stake, you fucking nincompoops. And so, you know what? I hope they died. I hope these fuckers all die. I hope the planet exploded, because that's what they goddamn deserve. Anyway. Screw them. So next, we'll get into number 2. Worst minor alien in Next Gen, and that is the anaphasic alien. And you might be like, what was the anaphasic alien? Well, let me clarify. Candle Ghost! Like Candle Ghost from Sub Rosa. Obviously, this whole thing is dumb. This is contrived writing. Oh, he's traveled to... I hate it when they do this TOS thing where they're like, oh, these aliens were on Earth centuries ago. And there's like traveled around from Scotland and traveled around all the Howard women, which doesn't make sense because some of them had to marry, and they would have changed their names, which is tradition, like Dr. Crusher did. So how they all have the same last name doesn't make any particular sense. But and they do this weird candle thing and they essentially sexually assault their victims. And then Crusher's like, oh, well, you know, at least he did love my grandmother. No, he fucking didn't. He was using her, sexually assaulting her. What the hell is wrong with... Anyway, screw it. Anyway, we'll get to my number 1 worst minor alien in Star Trek The Next Generation. And that is the Lagonians from Code of Honor. Yes, those ones. The basically space Africans. And yeah, they traveled to a far distant planet to meet Africans. Like, what? This is so offensive in so many levels. And they portray they portray black people as primitive and having these primitive cultures. And, you know, apparently the original idea was to have these, like, reptile-like aliens, and they were all originally supposed to be, like, more based off of Japanese culture. In fact, they even mention that in this episode. They have a line where Picard says, oh, this is from Japan, and similar culture to yours. But for somehow the director, who allegedly was racist, got his hands on this episode and said, no, let's just fucking make this all Africans and have them dressed like Africans, cast all black people, have them speak in African accents, and just make it Planet Africa, which is like so misguided. So, and it's othering. It's like, oh, look at these weird aliens. They're black people. They're not weird aliens. It's disgusting. Actors involved called it, like Jonathan Frakes called it, a racist piece of shit, referring to the episode. And Worf, Michael Dorn, classically, just said everyone was like appalled and laughing and like, what the hell? They actually doing this? They're actually doing this? So yeah, screw these. Screw these aliens. So, next we'll get into my top 5 best minor aliens of Star Trek The Next Generation. So we'll start with my number 5, which is the Karn. I'm going to stare at you very hard and look constipated, and that means I'm telepathically communicating with you. That's from the episode Dark Page. No, I like these guys. I think it's a very interesting concept. In fact, I would have liked to explore this more, that they're truly telepathic aliens they have the capacity to communicate verbally, but they never had the need to, so they never really developed a verbal language. And so Loaxana Troy actually being useful for once, not just like sexually harassing men, actually doing her fucking job as an ambassador, is helping them sort of acclimate and using her telepathic abilities to communicate with them and get them to communicate verbally. It's a very interesting concept, and I love it. And they were able to like detect something in Troy that was, sort of trauma that was endangering her, but they weren't able to communicate this properly. Like, very interesting concept. I actually really like these guys. So next we'll get to my number 4, which is the Nuskins. Play dumb jot human. Now granted, okay, so the Nuskins do appear again. They were mentioned before this episode, and they appear here in what's it called, Tapestry. And they're in an episode of Enterprise where they're pirates, and you see a lot of them in the background all the time. I think Discovery maybe even had it. I know the DS9 had it, like Brunt had 2 Nuskkin bodyguards and stuff, and they're mentioned a lot. So, but they're still minor. They're still not like a major player, so I still think they count. And I just like them because they say, "Play dumb Johnny human. Maybe I play with her, give her a good time." You talk, you're like all Starfleet, you talk and you talk, but you have no gramba. This is so quotable. They're so cool. Now, granted, they're just modeled off of the Predator from the Predator movies, essentially. And they're just like supposed to be like, they don't really have like, we don't know anything about their culture or the how their society functions or where they're from. We just know that they're constantly like, they're really strong bullies, and they like to bully people around and be pirates and stuff and bodyguards and work and that kind of thing. So that's all we know about them. And that they say, "Play dumb Johnny." And I really like them. So next we'll move on to my number 3 best minor alien, and that is the Dold. I'm what's called a Dold, and I killed the Hushnok. All Hushnok everywhere. I was wondering, Captain, when you and your team would be leaving. Anyway, the Dold. I'm called a Dold. So we meet the one dude, Kevin Osbrick from the episode The Survivors, if you don't know where I'm quoting from. One of my favorite episodes, and it's a very interesting concept, different than the Q, because a lot of people, they seem to have like omniscient powers, but I would say it's very clear that the Dold are not as omnipotent as the Q are. Their Q are pretty much, they can do anything they want there, and they control the whole galaxy, and they live outside the continuum and bullshit, whereas as the Dold seem to be a bit more constrained. Like, he's able to like wipe out an entire race of people with a thought, but he still finds it worthwhile to live as like an entire lifespan as a human and marry and still, but he's like the ultimate pacifist though, but his rage, his power was like so big that he unintentionally like in a split second thought, oh fuck all of them, I'm gonna wipe them out, and then instantly regretted it because he's like the ultimate pacifist. So that's a very interesting concept. I almost put the Hustock in here, but we never actually met them. We just hear about them. They sound like a bunch of dicks anyway, so the Hustock. Anyway, next, I was wondering, Captain, when you and your friends would be leaving. Anyway, next we will get into my number 2, and arguably they're not aliens, but I don't give a shit. They are. I mean, it's an alien technology, and they're alive, and they're the Exocoms, and they're awesome. Now, the Peanut Hamper sucks, but I'm not talking about Lower Decks at the moment. Although we do see some Exocoms other than Peanut Hamper in the Lower Decks, and they're pretty interesting. But and it also gives us a hint to where they go from here, because at the moment they're just a couple of tools being used to repair like this particle fountain station or whatever bullshit, and Data discovers that they're actually sentient and makes this discovery known, and apparently, as we know from Lower Decks, they will form their own society, which is very interesting, but they're so cute. Apparently, Narayan Shankar was against the fact, he didn't want them to be so cute, but I actually like that, the way they're just like these little things, and it's an interesting concept that there's a different kind of sentient artificial life form, different than Data, so much so that people didn't recognize it as sentient at first. So yeah, Exocoms are cool, like them. So next, we will get into my number 1 favorite minor alien from Star Trek The Next Generation, and that is the Tallarians from one of my favorite episodes of TNG, The Vengeance Factor. Now, I say that because I know most people hate this episode, which I don't get. I mean, I kind of do, because Riker killed Yuta for no goddamn reason. But other than that, I love this episode a lot for the world building that it does, and that's why I like the Tallarians. That's why I'd say they were the best minor aliens, because they're the ones that seem the most like dynamic and complex and interesting, in the concept of the gatherers, who are like these pirate types, but they sort of splintered off from the rest of the society during these clan wars. And it was interesting, like, exploring the clan wars and how like Yuta genetically engineered herself to go after a specific clan to try to win the clan wars even a century after they were over. Like, it's a very interesting concept, in the reunification, trying to bring the gatherers back into Akamar, and Picard sort of helping them do that. Like, all of that was really interesting, really dynamic. I actually would love to learn more about them. Now, we did get more about them in an episode of Lower Decks, where they were apparently had a peace treaty or something with the Federation. They had owned half of Starbase 80, and they were seen as like the gatherers, but they were making jokes about, oh, what, being all rough, but really they weren't. They were just cool. They were just, yeah, whatever, selling stuff. But and we also saw this random like henchman in a DS9 episode. What was it, Vortex or whatever, when this dude who wanted to kill this guy that Eido was arrested. Anyway, one of his henchmen was dressed kind of like a biker, and they say, actually, that's supposed to be an Akamarian. I'm like, all right, well, okay. So I guess they're now become mercenaries. I guess maybe some of the gatherers didn't want to assimilate back into Akamarian culture, which is interesting. I would love to learn more about this species. I think it was one of the best episodes for world building and really like putting across a dynamic species and getting me interested in them right away. So that is my number one favorite minor alien of Star Trek The Next Generation. So that is it for my top 5 worst and best minor aliens of Star Trek The Next Generation. Thanks so much for watching this video. Be sure to check out my channel as I continue to cover Star Trek. At the moment, covering every episode of Star Trek. I've done the original series Next Generation. Right now I'm working my way through Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Currently doing Season 4 of DS9 and Season 2 of Voyager. So check out my channel for that and many other Star Trek videos and weird stuff and stuff like that to come. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.